Well, again, let me officially start the night anyway. Welcome, I'm Mark Cleverell, and welcome to the Photography Academy. As I said, we're going to kick straight off with Jonny Seymour and his presentation tonight. So, Jonny, I'm just going to hand you over the screen, and you can take it away. Let me just change the presenter over to you. You should see a little screen that's popped up.
Yep.
Brilliant. I can see your screen. Take it away. I'll do the questions at the end if that's okay, Jonny. Anybody's got any questions, please actually pop them into the questions panel, and we'll actually answer them towards the end of tonight's webinar as such, really. So, Jonny, it's all yours. Take it away.
Great. Nice one. Cheers, Mark. Right, I thought I'd start you guys off by taking you through a few little things on my website and just showing you kind of why I'm talking to you today and what things I've done that make me deserve to sit in front of you, I guess. So these are just a few of the campaigns that I've worked on. It's for BT Sport. The previous one was Canon. It's the Nokia Lumia 1020 campaign. This is composites from CGI renders, so these are actually fully made up on the computer and then screenshotted in, and some more Redbull stuff. This is John Swanell. I've worked very closely with John Swanell for the last probably 4 years now, and yeah, we've got a good relationship, and we bounce ideas off each other all the time. Some more fashion work. Tapestry, funny enough, is where I started off doing my apprenticeship. I mean, you should check them out if you're into retouching. They're a really, really big retouching company, and I worked there for 4 years, and was lucky enough to do this Clark's campaign with them. This was an editorial for David Bailey. He's just launched his new clothing company. He sells his t-shirts exclusively at Selfridges. Shot by Sam Robinson. This is a piece of my work that I shot recently. Again, you can see obviously it's heavily retouched and stylized, and yeah. This is for Topshop. These were printed up absolutely enormous up on the side of buildings on Oxford Street and in central London. And so you can imagine the level of detail that we went into on the skin and everything, because people could really see every skin pore as they walked down the street. It was quite an amazing thing to see, to be honest. Some more product work and fashion work. And yeah, I'll leave it there anyway. We'll go on to see what's next. Yeah, some more fashion bits. I'll go on to what I'm going to show you today. So, as I said before, I'm going to focus mainly on colour today. So this is kind of what a normal file would look like after I've worked on it. As you can see, everything's very organised and very well named, and the file will be structured appropriately. So what I would do, how I would personally structure a file like in a professional manner, would be to duplicate the background layer originally. So I'll turn everything off. And this is how the file started. So I would always do my retouching on a duplicate of the background layer anyway, because that way it's editable if I want to mask back or change anything. I've got that option. And on this particular file, you can see I haven't actually really done any retouching to it. All I've done is just like quickly move out some hairs and nudge in his hand there. In terms of skin work, I'm not going to go into skin work today because it's a whole other topic, and it can, that could take up a whole few webinars on its own. But for this one, all I've done really, if I come in, you can see that I haven't actually cloned or removed anything. Everything is preserving the detail and keeping what's there in a professional manner. And like I said, I'll probably go through with the Photography Training Academy one day, and we'll hopefully do a seminar on that. Now inside the colour folder, I've got local colours, which is essentially what we're going to talk about today a lot, which is picking out elements of the image and enhancing them. And that's what I've done in there. And overall is my overall gradients, which is enhancing the overall image. So now once I open up these folders, and you can kind of come in and start to see the amount of different separate curves that I've got and what they're doing and controlling each element of the image. So I'll just turn everything off, and I'll run you through quickly what each separate curve is doing, and then I'll break it down and I'll talk to you and tell you why I've done each element and how to do it yourself. So to start off with, so initially I'm going to kind of pick out bits to me that I would like highlighted in my image. So for an image like this, for example, the hair is quite an intense part, so I've started off by adding contrast to the hair just there. You can see I'm turning that on and off. If I bring this out of fit so we can see that. And here you can see I'm just darkening the corners. Not by too much, not a massive vignette, mainly just to bring some of the focus to him. Lifting the face slightly, again not by too much, just to send your focus. And now a separate gradient, as you can see there, just pushing your eye straight towards his eye and the hair and the main focus of the attention of the image. This layer here is quite subtle, you might not be able to see on your screens, but it's just removing the red bits from the images and the red tint. Especially on hands and feet, you tend to get really red, raw red fingertips, noses, underneath of eye, that kind of areas. Darkening of the hands. Again, this is mainly just to bring your focus of attention to the face, so that, because obviously if the hands are brighter, your eye's going to be drawn towards them. And this is pushing all the highlights across the image. You can see if you look at just the hair or at just the jumper, then it's not actually being pushed. It's literally just the highlights there that I'm pushing up. And it kind of gives it quite an intense feel. Now overall curves, so these you can see, as you can see on my screen, none of these have masks. These are literally just overall curves applying to the whole image. The first one's just added a bit more contrast. Then I'm lightening. Lighten slightly more. And then a desaturate to give it the stylized look overall. Which gives it the feel, and as it's kind of a denim shot, I feel like it kind of should be the washed out colours that go with it, and you know, that is kind of a professional colour palette that you would see on any working file. On top of this image here, I've done a slight sharpening here in a layer. Again, I'll run you through all of this. Not too much. And I always like to add a slight grain to my images personally. That's just my taste. Again, not too much, just something to kind of break it up a little bit. Right. So now I'm going to come in and I'm going to talk to you about each element and explain to you how I built that up. Again, I turn everything off. So what I'm mainly using here, I mean, I know what for me is really, really important that I wouldn't stress enough is to 100% use a layered color system. I mean, if you're doing color directly to the background, the only problem with that is that you're never going to be able to adjust that again. Once you've done it, it's cemented in. You can't add another layer and change opacities and use masks, and there's so many more elements that you can bring in and change and adjust if you use it on a layered system. So I can't stress you how important it is to really use a layered system. The other thing is to really keep everything named really well, because as you can see in my file, I could look at something instantly and know where I'm going to find that on the image and how to change that quickly. And for your personal work, it might not be as important, but if I've got a client or a photographer sitting over my shoulder and they say, oh, can you change this? Then you know exactly where it is and you've kept everything neat and it's completely fine. So the main things that I use for doing colour, to be honest, is curves predominantly. It's quite rare that I'd almost use anything else. Obviously, for certain things, you're going to use selective colours, you're going to use hue and saturations, and you're going to use levels every now and again. But predominantly, most of my work will be done in curves, the channels within curves, and masking off the curves themselves. So let me explain how a curve works, just in case some of you aren't fully familiar. Turn everything off. So when you create a curve from the layer palette down here, it should pop up. And the way a curve works is this is your highlight point. So anything that I move up and down here is affecting the highlights. Anything down here is affecting the shadows. And anything in the middle is affecting my midtones, and I can bring them lighter up and darker down. So what having a curve gives you the power to do is, if I place down a couple of points in the midtone and the highlights and keep them steady, I can then just pull down just the shadows, or I can bring up just the shadows. So if you start doing things like that, you can flatten out your image there, or you can darken just your image there, but keeping the highlights. You can see the hands, almost the highlights in the hands and the jacket don't change at all there. Again, you can do the exact same thing with the highlights. You can just push. You see that there, like the hair isn't being affected. Again, the jacket isn't really being affected because it's in the midtones. And I'm just pushing that background there and a few bits on the hands and whatnot. Now the other things you can do in curves, which a lot of people don't tend to know, is you can come into channels here, and you've got your red, your green, and your blue. And again, you have the exact same format where you've got your highlights, your shadows, and your midtones. Now this little tool here, with the hand, you can actually, if you hover over parts of your image, it can actually tell you which area you're focusing on, which is a good tool. And if you click somewhere, that can put down a point for you, and then you know that if you adjust there, that is going to affect where you want it to. So the good thing with curves is the power of control, essentially. And when you start using the masks integrated with it, to kind of the sky's your limit almost, because, I mean, if I just show you quickly that if I wanted to take a bit of yellow out of his face, for example, I think it might be a bit of a dirty color. So I've just selected his face to the clicker, and I'll go up because that's adding in blue to that point on his face, and then I can delete the mask of the curve here. So now nothing is coming through. As you can see, the mask on this is black. Now all you have to do is get a brush and have it on the white here, as you can see down on the bottom left of my screen, and you can brush in on areas and just remove areas of yellow. Like that. Obviously I'm doing this quite crudely here to show you quickly, but as you can, if I put it on an extreme, you can see that I've just brushed that into just those areas. This is going to be key to the power of what I show you with the curve today, because again, if I wanted to just lighten his face, I can now just get a brush, and I'm just kind of on a low opacity here, about 20%. And the white again on the bottom left of my screen, you can see here that I'm using just the white square, and I'm brushing now onto the black mask again over here on the right hand side. And you can see that now when I brush on that mask, I'm actually just affecting there. And as soon as you start to kind of realize this and adapt to using this, you start to realize how powerful the curves can be, and why using kind of any color system that's cemented into the background kind of seems insane after you start realizing the potential of this. The possibilities are kind of endless. You can build up thousands of layers if you really want to. So I'm gonna, now I've kind of briefly spoken about that. You can see on my mask here actually that that's where I brushed on his face with the white. So now briefly spoken about that, I'm going to start actually breaking down the color that I chose to do on this file. So the contrast of the hair. See, what I like about the hair is the fact that the highlights in it really ping and to hold the shadows quite deep. So you can see here that I've kind of held my shadow point pretty much flat, so that the darks aren't going any darker. So I mean, if you just added contrast to that using a contrast layer, it just separates the highlights and the dark points. Whereas with a curve, I can say, right, I want the shadows to remain the same, but I want to pull up those highlights. And you can see that that's affecting pretty much all the highlights in the hair and just making them ping slightly. And you can see here in the dark point on the mask, I've literally just brushed that in quite crudely, quickly. So masking isn't, you don't have to have perfect masks on these. You know, if you've got the time to mask things out perfectly, then great, spend all the time you want on them. But you know, this is kind of everything that I've done in this demo is all with quick masking and just a big brush. I haven't actually pathed out anything, done any selective colors. It's all done very quickly. So to darken the corners of the image and do like custom vignettes, as you can see here, I've literally just pulled down the midtones and then I've brushed in on the mask. Again, this is kind of what I've done. Again, you can see it's very crude, big brushes, just to elements that I kind of like. And that's bringing down his hand and the corners of the image. So to lift the face, you can see this element here. It's kind of mainly just pushing up the highlights in there. I'm going to turn that on and off. And as you can see again here, I've just done a slight contrast curve. Nothing major, just held the shadow points, pushed the highlights. And my mask there. Again, big brush, straight in the middle. You can do that in 2 seconds. Now to vignette up, again, I've just done another curve, and I've just pulled down the midtones. But this time I've used the gradient, instead of using a brush, I've used the gradient tool, which can be found here. Now if I have the white at the top, and I just pull the gradient up, it creates quite a smooth curve like this, which has quite a natural feel to it. And essentially all that's doing is just bringing your focus up to it, not up to the face. You know, it's kind of zoning your attention up there. Now here's something slightly different. So to remove the reds from little bits of the image and parts of the fingers, face and whatnot, I personally like to use a selective color. You know, everyone's different. You could, again, you could go into a curve and you could go into the red channel and take out a bit of red and maybe push in a bit of yellow in the blue channel. If you take blue out, it puts in yellow. If you know your color palette, it's essentially reversing and adding up colors to build up tones and textures that you like. But the simplest way that I find to remove bits of red is to actually come into the layer palette, and if you use selective color, which is down here, and you click that, it will come up with this menu. And in selective color, you can actually go in and you can pick every individual channel. So you can zone in on any color without having to do any mask, which is kind of initially is just an amazing feature. Especially if you think that you wanted to adjust, say you had a white background, you wanted to adjust that, you know, you can go into your whites, you can pull that around. See, I've got white zones there, but the rest of it's probably, I'll probably grab it in the grays, I bet. If I turn off that mask. You see that? I know it's quite crude again, obviously, but so what I'm using it here for is, as I said, just to remove red from the hands and the skin tones. So the way that I chose to do that was to go into the red channel. Out of all of them, I would pick the red. On the magenta slider, and I've just taken out about 10. You know, you can, dependent on what colour skin someone is, you obviously might have to adjust what channel you go into. For someone that's black, obviously it's not going to be in the red channel, but it'd probably be in the magenta. And you can also add in, a bit of cyan. You see, if you push it to an extreme there, you can see that you can affect that. But tend to be with Caucasian people, with white people, you'd also push in maybe a tiny bit of yellow as well to kind of give it a warmer skin tone, because if you just take red out, you tend to get really dead, pale looking skin tones that aren't pretty. And for my mask on this, as you can see how crude that is literally just a big brush on his hands, his face. And you can see inside this facial area around here, what's that doing there? Just removing that red. Again, I've got another curve here to just darken down the sides of the hands and bring in your focus of attention. And again, you can see my masks very crude, very quick. Now, this is something different as well. This is showing you another example of how powerful the curves can be. So this is just bringing up, you can see this is just pinging all my highlights really bright, really nice. It gives you that vibrant, contrasty feel that's really nice, I think, and kind of real campaign feel to it. You know, you can see tons of billboards around the world and in shops with this kind of effect on. And if you look at my mask on this one, you'll actually see that it's pretty much a black and white form of the image. And so the way that you can grab this, I'll show you from scratch. So if I create a curve, you can just go into the channels, and in your channels you get your red, green and blue, and you can just pick one of them, whichever one you like the look of best that suits your needs. So if you wanted shadows, you might go with that one. If you wanted highlights, you might go with that one, but for the mids you just select this. So I'm not entirely sure what the shortcut is for Windows because I haven't used one for years, but on a Mac it's just Command or Apple and select, and that actually selects that entire channel, and you can just stick that, you can delete that into a curve, and if I invert it you can see that I've now got that mask, and I can then go in and I can brighten that, and that gives you that effect. So that's kind of the localized color, what we're doing. And you see all those effects built up, what that's managed to achieve. And you know, once you've got a system down and you kind of know what you're looking for in an image, you can probably put all that together, and you could do that yourself in 20 minutes maybe. You know, and you might have to tweak it and whatnot, but you can really build up very fast and get a skill set going very quickly. Now for the overall colours, if I turn these on, you can see pretty much what I've done is, again, increase the contrast even more, lighten the image slightly, and desaturate. So that's adding my contrast here. And again, that's just a simple S-curve. And essentially I've pushed the highlights up and the shadows down. I haven't gone into any channels or anything. And to lighten, I've actually lightened across two curves, just purely because I didn't want to push it to an extreme in one. But you could easily do that in one. It probably wouldn't make a difference, to be honest. And to desaturate, to get that stylized look, I just opened up the Hue and Saturation tab, and took it out. Obviously, if you go full, that'll take it to black and white. And if you push in, you can push extreme colors. And to get to about the amount that I like is around about here. And that's for me, that's just personal preference. That's the style that I like. And obviously, when you're playing around with your own images and you're thinking about what you want to do, once you've played around with a variety of things, you know, you'll start to pick up on what you like to achieve the color of your images, and you know what your effect is and how you like your images to feel and express themselves. So now you think, like, what really have we done that's complicated is nothing, and yet the look that we've achieved from this image, which is quite a simple image really, is amazing. You know, that is a relatively standard portrait to take. I mean, I took it. I've only used two lights, one for a big soft light from the front and an umbrella from behind. And then you can achieve a really classy looking portrait pretty quickly with this method. So this is a black and white shot. Again, you can kind of see that my style of imagery that I personally like is quite slick. Again, it's just got that really dark textured feel to it, pinging highlights and nice slick skin. And if I turn this on and off, you see that's how it's shot. And that's with the retouching. And you can see here when I open this up. Again, we're not going to talk about the skin work today, but I'll show you what I've done on it. Is again, you can kind of see how bruised and battered his eye looks, and all these bits around here, and I haven't actually cloned anything there. There's no cloning or anything. That is just purely using what texture's there to preserve all the detail and really make that have a lovely skin texture. For my black and white conversion, some of you are probably thinking that I might be doing something special or different, but I'm really not. If I turn everything off, my black and white conversion is literally just a hue and saturation layer to -100. You know, I know there's tons of ways you can do it, and you're all going to have your own preference, and that's completely fine. You know, whatever you think works for you best and whatever is best with your workflow. Some people might like to process them out from the Capture One or Lightroom black and white. Again, that's completely fine. I just personally like to have it all editable because one day I might decide that I want that in colour, and that's it with the black and white off. I personally think it's a much more powerful image in black and white. So, in terms of the curves that I've used for a black and white image, again, I'll build them up and then we'll break them down. So really, like, just even from these two images, very simple images that are just like bog standard white studio shots, you've got to begin to realize the power of, you know, zonally using curves and not just kind of overall just having an effect. Or I know a lot of you probably use actions and just press something and it will just go ping and you'll get a vignette and you'll do everything, and really customizing each image and really focusing on where your center point of your image is and how you can bring the user's attention or the viewer's attention to that center point is really important. And I mean, for me, when I look at this shot, initially, what was I thinking? I was kind of thinking, well, my eye at the moment, I mean, his arm is definitely brighter than his face. My attention isn't drawn to his eyes yet. This space up here is probably a bit too bright, but I mean, I like things being blown out to white. It's kind of my style that I really enjoy, so I was going to keep that, and I'll probably push it even further. So, as you can see, again, I start off with lightening the face, lightening the hair, some contrast in the face, darkening his arm, lightening all the highlights. As you can see there, it's not affecting any shadows. No mask on it though. Darken the arm further. Darken the arm even further, just in certain points, just in these kind of highlighty areas. bring up the highlights on his scarf down here. Lighten his hat for textures. You know, if this was for a fashion shoot and it was a brand, they'd probably want that hat pinging out even more if it was what they were selling. I've added some contrast into the ring up here as well to make that ping. Just darken this finger just up here. Add in some overall contrast to the image. And then finally, some highlights on the face to really bring your attention in there. And now it's kind of, if we just flick that on and off again, now you've seen it build up. I mean, that's kind of changing it from being pretty average shot, really. I mean, just saying I shot it, and I'm saying it's average, saying something, and then it transforms it into like a beautiful shot. I mean, it's a really powerful image now. I think, you know, I think that's a great portrait now. It really brings your attention. You don't know what he's thinking. It's got motion in it. He just looks like a rhinestone cowboy almost, and it's, yeah, is what it is. So again, I'm just going to break this down slowly for you and show you really how kind of simple it was to build it up and what it takes to kind of make an image look like this. So again, pretty much all using curves. I don't think I used anything else on this, to be honest. I think this image is entirely curves. And the other thing that I will stress as well is I know some people get really pent up about skin work and that their image won't be great if they haven't got perfect skin on them. I mean, if you actually turn off the level of retouching I've actually done, I haven't really done much at all. It's mainly focusing on the colour work, because that's why I stress to anyone new and learning Photoshop and any photographers, when they really want to know what's important about making their images look amazing, it's always going to be what colours you're using and tones you're using and how you can push that. And it's not about your skin texture or how it looks, because, I mean, it's just not important. And if anything, if you flick through a lot of the kind of high-end magazines these days, a lot of the models, they have barely any skin work done to them. It's very minimal now. People tend to focus more on retouching the clothes and pushing that aspect of it. Unless it's a beauty campaign, obviously, then you're going to really want to push the skin and make your images stunning. So as you can see from my retouching, I've actually only really used the liquify tool to kind of push out, straighten up his arm, his hat, and then I've removed a strand of hair up here by the hat as well, and that's what I've done alongside the skin work. So yeah, let's break this down. So for starters, lightening the face. I'll turn that on and off, bring it in, and just to show you the masks again, it's literally, I just get a big brush, 20%. I would normally have it very soft as well, like pretty much always at 0% hardness, and I would just brush that over these kind of areas. Just remember when you're looking at masks, when you make the curve, so if it's solid black like this, you make the mask solid black on the curve. Make sure you grab your brush and that it's set to white on the top, and then you can just brush in over that. And then you can see that comes up on the mask. Lightening the hair. Again, you see I've just held the shadow points here, pulled up the highlights, turn that on and off. For me, that's just dark. That's not centering any attention or anything, that's just creating a really nice hair texture, just so it's not as flat. A bit of contrast in the face, which is actually just in the shadow areas, so I've held the highlight point up here and just pulled down curve here, brushed it in very crudely. To darken the arm, again, it's just really simple, brushing in, big brush. I mean, this is just the reason why I've shown you it with a really big crude brush as well. It's just because I want to kind of stress that you don't have to sit here cutting things out for hours or trying to get the perfect selective colour. And Because if anything, if you try and do a selective color and you grab a bit of an image, and sometimes it can be a bit noisy, or it might not have all the shadow part of the area masked, you can really kind of affect and get that really kind of horrible noisy look and horrible masky look that you sometimes will get in these areas. Whereas if you use a big brush and it spills over a bit, kind of so what? The masters of photography, they were working in dark rooms for years. They didn't have any kind of solid masking techniques, so I don't see why you'd need solid masking techniques to create stunning images now. That's the kind of stuff they would have been doing in the dark room. So lightening all the highlights in this image. See, I've put in 2 points to hold it here. The reason being is that if I got rid of this point in the middle, it's not as contrasty now. It's bringing up the mid-tone slightly as well. So if I just bring in the point here, you'll see what it does, and I bring that down. That just adds to that contrasty feel. Again, to further darken the arm. Darken the arm even more. And again, if I show you masks, simple, very simple. Scarf highlights. You can see just, again, because it's a kind of fashiony shoot, if it was a product that they would push in, they would definitely want that brought up, and so it just makes the logo stand out away from the light of the image. Just doing that. Very simple, very nice. Just holding the shadow, mid-tones, bringing up the highlights. And again, for the hat, like I said, if it's a product, they'd want it pushed. And it brings out the fact that it's a nice leather texture. Because previously, when you look at that, if I turn that off, the hat looks quite dull and faded. Whereas that's just really bringing it to life, giving it a three-dimensional feel. Again, the only reason I've added contrast to the ring is a bit of personal preference, but also because if it was a product, they would want that ping, and they'd probably go even brighter than that. Darkening of the finger. That's mainly because it just is really distracting when it's that bright, because you've got 3 fingers next to it, they're dark. There's no reason why that one should be bright. Get that down. Simple mask. Bringing down the mid-tones. Perfect. Overall contrast. See, no mask in that. Very simple S-curve, just bringing up the highlights, down the shadows. You could do something like this if you really wanted to in brightness and contrast. I know some of you probably use that. That's going to give you the same effect. As you can see, you can just keep nudging up that number and go as high as you want on that. That's going to give you the same effect as doing it with curves. But the only thing is that if now I'm looking at this brightness and contrast and I go, well, actually, I like that contrast, but I'd like the highlights to be even brighter. In this one, I can just go ching, 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 and knock that up. Whereas in brightness and contrast, I'd have to go, oh, okay, and then I'd have to make either another curve or figure out another way of changing the contrast rather than having it all editable on the one curve. Now, again, this is for the highlights of the face, which is just brushed on, and just bringing them up really high. And that really just brings your full attention to the center. And there you have it. That is the breakdown of that shot. So there is our before, and there is our after. And I just showed you how simple it was, and there's no reason why, with a bit of practice and know-how, you can't achieve results like this. And as I showed before, in case anyone missed it, my black and white conversion is literally just hue and saturation. I'll show you how I do it anyway. I literally just would grab the hue and saturation layer from down here, select that, and just pull the saturation right down. And I know some people will probably say that you lose detail and whatnot. I don't think you do lose detail. There's no evidence of losing detail anywhere when I convert mine to black and white. If anything, I think this is a really good editable way to hold it like that. Obviously, if you want to just press the black and white button, feel free. And you can go, they've got presets and stuff in there that you can flick through. I mean, the only reason that I wouldn't use that is because personally I like to have everything editable that I've edited and I've created, rather than just going, oh, does this look good? Does this look good? Does this look good? You know, because that's not controlling the image. That you might get a nice effect of it after a while, but I mean, you're not having the maximum amount of control that you could have over your image, and that's really what I would stress is the most important thing if you want to become a retoucher, if you just want to improve your own retouching. You know, just really going and refining the core skills and building it up simply, and just picking out areas to make them better and nicer, really. And that were the two images that I was going to run you through. So Mark, are you there?
Oh yeah, mate, and we got 1,000,001 questions. Thanks, Johnny. That was absolutely superb. I was quite annoyed at everybody asking me questions, to be honest, because I wanted to watch the demonstration myself. Good news is we recorded it, so I'll watch it tonight probably, actually, but it'll be on the site. Yeah. It'll be on the site for next week, I promise, guys. Okay.
It's amazing what you can achieve, isn't it? It's really...
Yeah. Do you mind if we kind of just go straight into the sharpening question? Because, I mean, that's something that's come up 1,000,000 times tonight. Well, not that many, that's me exaggerating it. But it absolutely kind of keeps coming up all the time. How much do you sharpen, if at all?
I mean, again, it's all personal preference. All of it is personal preference. A lot of photographers that I work for don't sharpen their images but they're shooting on these beautiful phase cameras. You know, the images come out and they're like 150 megabytes. They don't need to sharpen them; they're absolute crisp. But I'm shooting on a D800, and the images are, to be fair, you know, super crisp. As you can, I don't know if you can still see my screen. Can you?
Yeah, I can still. Yeah, we're still live with you.
Cool. And so you can see the amount of sharpening that I've done when I'm flicking that on and off. Barely any. But
and what's your preferred technique with that?
Again, there's 1,000,001 ways you can do it, as you know. But my way for keeping it editable is probably quite a complicated way, which is essentially I would create a new layer just from down here. I select my color picker tool and I go to a 50% grey. Oh no, I'm going a different way. This is for noise, sorry. Start again. Ignore what I just did. So, if you select all your layers and duplicate them, to duplicate them, you literally just drag them onto the new layer palette, so this here. Then if you merge them all, which is Command E or layer merge visible.
I can give you a quick shortcut for that if you want.
Yeah.
If you go Shift Control Alt E, Shift Control Alt E, which is Shift Control Apple E, you don't have to duplicate the layers. It puts a new layer on top from the merge of below, as it were.
There you go. You learn something new every day.
You know, I just learned loads tonight myself, mate, and that was in the 10 minutes I had free to watch. So it's a language, isn't it? You get to learn kind of of slang, and I know a lot of swear words in Spanish now. Put it like that. Anyway, let's get back to the night with it. Sorry.
So anyway, once you've got your layer on top, the duplicated layer, my personally preferred method of sharpening is to do a high pass, and that's just purely the way the effect that I feel it makes. So you go Filter, Other, and High Pass, and it gives you this kind of weird effect. And you can go as high as you want. I mean, some people can push it really high and you start getting really weird stuff, but if you tend to keep it down at around 3 or 5, that tends to be the amount you go. You press OK on that, and then you just switch the layer style to overlay. You see, that's really sharp. But I feel like this way is the way that you get the least amount of kind of, you know, you get weird sharpening edges on stuff if you sharpen a bit too much, and You're always going to get that even in this kind of method, but I feel like personally this is the best form of sharpening. It gives me the best feel and the best effect that I like.
And obviously to do that, you obviously do that as your very last thing of an image, yeah, before it goes off.
100%, yeah. Wouldn't ever work on top of sharpening because it just makes it harder for yourself. You know, you make your skin pores sharper, your hair sharper. It just all becomes a bit more finicky and technical.
Brilliant. You talked the very first image, just to kind of just go back for a minute. Could you go through how you grabbed the black and white version of the first image as a mask again, please?
Yeah, of course. So that's this one.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. So if I just create a curve again, and as you can see, it's just plain white, the mask on that. I'll just go into my channels, and if you flick through your channels, you can see the image in black and white. And then you essentially pick which one you like the look of best or what you feel is going to suit your needs the most. Tends to be the green channel if you want a bit of both. And if you press, again, I don't know what the shortcut is on Windows because I don't use it. I'm sorry,
Control.
I apologise, but if, on a Mac it's Command. It's Control on a Windows.
Control on PC, yeah.
Cool. And then it's, so you just hold a Command or Control, brings up this kind of box around the hand, select the channel that you would like, select your mask here on the curves, and because my black is at the bottom of this side, when I delete onto this curve, you can see the mask has now appeared like this. And obviously that's wrong, so I invert that, which, again, I don't know where that is in this because I'm used to using shortcuts. Select invert, maybe? No. It's Command I. Sorry, can't find it. Anyway, but that's how you find it. That is how you do it.
Brilliant, mate.
That's it. Simple as that.
Would you sharpen? Sorry, we're stuck on the sharpening thing again. Would you sharpen more for a billboard image than you would for a smaller image, or what?
No, not. Again, if it's a billboard, will always be shot on an enormous camera. It's very rare that a billboard would be shot on something that isn't a Phase or a Hasselblad, or it might still be shot medium format, and they'd be drum scanned to 200 megabytes. You know, the files are absolutely enormous. I mean, once we're working on them in Photoshop, these files get up to, it's not uncommon to be 10 gigabytes on a file, 5 gigabytes on a billboard. It's massive, absolutely massive. So no, we tend to not need sharpening on them, because and it's purely down to the cameras, and also, you know, if the photographer's good and everything's in focus, then it's all good.
Cool.
Obviously, there are occasions where it does need it, but
when you're working on a campaign and you've got to get the same look across, let's say, 6 to a dozen images, besides for the individual masking of each image, do you literally grab the adjustment curves and the layers and pop them onto another image, or do you start from scratch each time?
To a certain extent. See, this is where colour gets complicated. I mean, making your own curves up, like I've showed you today, is really easy for one image. But when you've got a campaign or a lookbook and you've got 20 images that need to be bang on, absolutely identical because they're going to be sitting next to each other, it gets a bit tricky, because obviously you can drag, we do drag across the layers, so you get a starting point, but it's never going to be exactly the same, and then that's really where a kind of a real strong eye for colour comes in, and you have to really focus your attention on really finicky details to make it precise. And it's kind of where a bit of maths comes into it as well, because you might need to work out RGB and CMYK values. It's a bit more of the complicated area, to be honest.
And saying that, are you working in CMYK or RGB? What's your preference?
I would always work in RGB and convert for print at the end, mainly because in this modern day world, 9 times out of 10 or 99% of the time, it's going to end up on the web in some form. And RGB has a much bigger colour gamut than CMYK. So
okay, brilliant.
And for web, RGB is better. So,
yeah. There's a question, but it's a funny one, I think. Do you ever get fed up of lazy photographers not doing it in camera and leaving it to the retouchers to get the image done? Don't answer that. Don't
it is
answer
funny-
that. You're a
it is funny
retoucher.
one. I'm not really going to answer it.
No,
But
good.
I will say that a lot of the big photographers, they're big for a reason. A lot of them, their images are amazing. I've worked with some amazing photographers. I've been very privileged, and the way that they like things and their eye for details is amazing in itself. And although a lot of people might think that they leave it for the retouchers, the photographer will be sitting by your side every step of the way, picking out the elements that he wants done and how he wants it changed or whatnot. So he does have complete creative direction over an image still. It's not as if he kind of shuts something at you and goes, make this look good. It really isn't like that at all.
Cool.
Yeah.
Talking about colour, obviously, tonight and things, we'll try and do another one soon on skin and things. Calibration, what's your preferred kind of calibration tool? Have you got any?
No, I mean, I haven't calibrated in a while, to be honest, because we kind of have studio assistants that do them. But it's when I was doing it, I think we used the Spider one. I'm not sure exactly what it's called, to be honest. But I mean, the new ISOs have it built in.
Yeah.
And that's what we have at a lot of the studios now. And you can set it to calibrate your screen once a week, and it's absolutely spot on. You don't have to think about it then. I know it's a bit expensive for the screen, but if you're thinking of investing, it's a worthwhile investment, I believe.
The kind of image that you've worked on tonight, let's say the one in front of us now, if this was for a campaign, what's the kind of the time spent per image, do you think?
I mean, that's one of those questions that's impossible to answer. I mean, for a campaign image, I mean, if it's going absolutely enormous, like billboard size, I could easily spend a day on an image, no worries. I mean, the longer time you give me, I could spend it on there. If you gave me 3 days to spend on that image, I could spend 3 days on it, probably refining every detail and making it pinpoint perfect. But realistically, you don't get that, and I would probably spend 4 hours on an image on average for something like this. But again, bigger the photographer, bigger the time scale, or bigger the budget, so we can spend more time. Time is a luxury, and it depends if the money's there.
As far as compositing is concerned, have you got a preferred cutout method and style?
Yeah, clip and paths.
Okay.
Which is the pen tool.
Yep.
And yeah, again, I can't really step into something like that as simply as just saying use this, because it's a lot more complicated than just saying just do this, because it's not just cutting something out. Once you stick something on a new background, you've got to rebuild shadows, blend colors, and blend edges, and it's not just the case. I can't just say brush around this and then you'll be able to stick it on a background. It really doesn't work like that. Obviously, you've probably tried it. It's not as easy as it would seem.
What about bled modes and things, really? We haven't seen you kind of really use any bled modes tonight. Obviously, there was one at the end there, as far as when you're using the high pass was concerned. But luminosity, when you're working with colour, is that something that you use at all or not?
No, I don't use any blend modes, to be honest. I mean, I've used them in the past, but I feel like once you kind of understand and be able to control everything individually, you don't really need them as such. There's a few times that I will use them to achieve specific effects, but predominantly, no, I don't really use blend modes that much. I mean, again, I've got one on my grain here. You can see I put my grain on soft light, so it doesn't affect the shadow areas, but no, I don't really use them a lot, to be honest.
Great. Could you... there's a couple of little questions anyway that we had in the beginning. I haven't done those yet. Are you okay for a couple of minutes? Is that all right?
I've got all the time in the world, mate. Yeah, it's fine.
Thank you, Johnny.
In other words, 20 minutes.
Yeah. I see. You should have a beer by the side of you at this stage, and then we can kind of go on for hours. Who defines the outcome for the retouching work? So is it your client giving you kind of mapping of what they want done, or how does the photograph get to you, and how does the image exit you? Who's giving you all the information and so on?
Okay, so what happens on a big budget job? We've got the photographer on set, and he'll have a digital operator who essentially sits on the computer, so everything he shoots goes directly to the computer, and they'll then pick the selects on the set on the day normally, and they'll come to us probably the next day. And if I've been working with a photographer for a while, we'll do basic things. We'll know what they like, so we kind of get it to a point, and then he'll come in and refine the details, and then we'll get comments from the client. So say Burberry or someone will then send us, or someone from Burberry would then come in as well, have a look at the image, and normally with campaign stuff, the client has the biggest say in the overall end product. the photographer obviously gets some say, but the client tends to overrule in the long run because they're the one forking out. Say, you know, the kind of budgets go insane on these jobs, but yeah, a lot of money.
Sunburn. Any tips to remove the the really redness? I know you've done some red tonight and things. Really, is there anything different?
That selective color method will work a treat on sunburn, mainly because on this image it doesn't really do it justice how much you can achieve because of the color of his skin. Unfortunately, I mean, if I haven't really got any images here that it would be good on, I don't think, unfortunately, to show you quickly. But I mean, where was it? In this. So you can, because this is targeting just the reds, so for sunburn that's perfect because you can really, like, if you push this quite far, so down to like 15 or 20, I know it might start making it a weird color here, but then you could just go in and be like, all right, that's a bit of a manky yellow or a green. So then I come into the yellow bit here, and can you see what I've just done there? So now I've pulled out even more red. So with sunburn, it is just about playing. I would just play this red channel of selective color until you get the result you want, really. That is the method of choice. And also you can also, in the hue and saturation layer, you can desaturate a bit, if that helps, because this has channels that you can go into. But then you might have your skin looking a bit concretey, almost a bit grey, so I would tend to go with selective colour and curves.
Which is the hardest skin colour to work with, in your opinion?
It doesn't make a difference, to be honest. It's pretty. I mean, in terms of colour, it doesn't make a difference at all. I mean, in terms of characteristics of each skin types, they're all very different, and I mean, and obviously each person's different. And I think with a lot of high-endy stuff, you can get, if the model's really skinny, they've had dieting problems, sometimes there'll be a little bit, you can get like kind of feathery hairs on their faces, and so sometimes that can be a real pain. But skin colours, no, there's no difference, I wouldn't say.
Cool. Any advice on acquiring jobs in the photo retouching world?
Yeah, I mean, just how I get in contact with people, and how a lot of people get their break is just to like build up a little portfolio of your work, as much as you can, and just Google, retouching studios London, and just get your work out there. Just like look for their info and send them out. They might not reply, but if you send your work, and my biggest thing that I would say to anyone applying is really customize each email. You can't stress how important that is, because if I get an email and I can tell it's generic, then I'm not going to reply to that, because it looks to me like you've just spammed out to 50 or 100 people or 50 or 100 companies, and that's if anything, that's slightly rude. I think you should really customize each one and say why you'd like to work with them and talk about what you'd like to do. And then, because then you really grab their attention, because everyone loves to be flattered. So if you send someone an email and say, oh, I really like that you did this, your work's great, they're going to go, oh, cheers, mate. They're at least it's going to put a smile on their face. They're going to at least think about you. And if they don't reply once, send them another email in a month or 2 months. Don't reply in a week saying, why didn't you reply to my email? But yeah, that's all I can say, to be honest. It's a hard world to get into, but there is opportunities and there is chances. I see new people getting trained all the time, and it's still a big world. There's a lot of jobs.
Brilliant. A couple more then, and then we're done, mate. What's the best Wacom tablet size to actually work with when you're retouching and things? Got a preference?
Yeah, I mean, dependent on screen size, but for me, I would always go with the Wacom Intuos, which is kind of the professional model, and I'd always go for the large, which is the A4. And that's, again, it's personal preference, because I like to have my whole screen covered by the tablet. I always find that if you use the smaller tablets, they whiz across the screen a bit too fast for me. It's just not comfortable to work with, especially when you're working on long periods of time. That's kind of, yeah. But some people, some people love these tiny tablets, and they can work really fast with them. And again, it's personal preference, picking out which one you want. Go into a store, if you go into kind of the specialist IT stores, they tend to have them set up in places. You can try them out, try out a few different ones, or ask for advice in stores, and they'll let you know.
Brilliant. Last question. I'm not sure if you can or you're willing to demo it straight away. Sub's got some real problem with kind of lightening underneath the eyes. Any kind of quick trick that you can show us to lighten just below the eye and so on?
Yeah. On this guy's eye, you can see it's quite dark there. It's essentially just using the technique that I kind of showed most of the night, to be honest. I would literally just go into grab a curve, like I have here. If you select this hand, press this area, and it gives me a point on the curve. Then I would just notch this up. Make the mask on here black by deleting it, so now it's solid black. Again, a brush with a 10% opacity or a really low opacity or flow, whichever one you prefer to use. Make sure it's white at the top. There you go, that's taken me 2 seconds. I know it's not done fully, but it's a start. And it's as simple as that, really.
Absolutely brilliant, mate. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to take the screen back anyway. Let me just bring that back to me. So, Jonny, thank you so much. It's been absolutely brilliant to actually watch a real skilled kind of user of colour and kind of manipulation of the simple tools within Photoshop to really take an image to absolutely way beyond its basic level. I think we can all fall into a habit every now and again of actually, trying to use everything within Photoshop itself, but it's just trying to find the right tools that you're happy with and so on. This is, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Thanks. Anything you want to finish off with by saying, or anything?
No, I mean, just like, if anything, just I would say, I know I've seen tons of people and they buy these actions on the internet that go, press this button and it gives you this amazing effect. I mean, just avoid it. Just really try and figure out, just look at an image and try and break it down and think about how you can make that, utilizing the raw tools and layering it yourself. And that is how you're going to learn, and that's how you'll improve. And just the longer you're doing it for, the more your eye will improve and the better your images will get. And I guarantee you'll start noticing massive differences in your work if you customize to each image. And yeah, that's it, really.
Brilliant, mate. Thank you so much for joining us. And again, as I said, Jonny's going to actually be on board with us soon to actually do some kind of tutorials and so on. But again, thank you so much, mate. Fingers crossed we'll drag it back again for another kind of quickie night and so on. But I know we're already discussing with him about doing some special kind of marathon ones where perhaps we'll kind of go into the depths of kind of retouching and so on with it. It might be a small cost involved with that, just for the hours that it'll actually take and so on with it. But Jonny, from me to you and everybody else there, thanks for kind of doing it. Some absolutely amazing techniques there, mate. Give my regards to your dad, and fingers crossed I'll be seeing some more of your work soon, because you're a pretty hot photographer as well, mate. Looking forward to seeing some more.
Great. Cheers, mate.
Brilliant. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye now.
See ya. Bye.